Elijah Carter was just solving a math problem. Until his white professor stood up mid-class and accused him of cheating. Not because he had notes. Not because he got it wrong. But because he solved it too fast. And when Elijah pushed back, they erased his name from the university's records. What they didn't know, he was about to expose a 30-year cover-up on live TV. Before we deep dive into this interesting story, subscribe to our channel and tell us where are you watching from. Share in the comments below. Westbridge University didn't just pride itself on prestige, it wore it like a crown. The sandstone buildings loomed like monuments to tradition, and the faculty carried themselves with the quiet arrogance of people who'd never been questioned, especially not by someone like Elijah Carter. Room 304 of the Math and Sciences building was always too cold. Its fluorescent lights buzzed just loud enough to be a distraction, and its whiteboard bore the faint ghosts of past equations. On the morning it happened, Professor Gerald Whitmore stood before the class in his signature herringbone blazer, arms crossed, eyes gleaming with smug satisfaction. "This," he said, scribbling a complex multivariable calculus problem across the board, "is what separates the curious from the capable. A problem unsolved since it was published in 1992. Solve it, and you'll have proven you're something special. Fail." He paused, letting the silence stretch, "and you're just like everyone else." He capped the marker and turned around, surveying the students. Most were white, some were international, all from top-tier high schools. The university's reputation for diversity was mostly on the brochures. At the back of the room sat Elijah. He kept his hoodie up despite the cold, a battered notebook open in front of him. His hands were calloused from years of working side jobs his peers didn't know about. He rarely spoke in class, not because he couldn't, but because when he did, eyes rolled and tones shifted. Questions he asked were often met with, "We'll cover that later," or "Let's not get ahead of ourselves." When Whitmore gave the challenge, murmurs buzzed through the classroom. Some students laughed nervously. A few took out their calculators. Others didn't even bother. It was more of a stunt, really, a way for the professor to remind them of how high the bar was. But Elijah stared at the board, unblinking. The symbols didn't look impossible to him. They looked familiar. For 10 minutes, the room pretended to try. Pens scratched paper. Some students Googled terms under their desks. Whitmore leaned against his desk, sipping coffee and waiting for the class to give up. Then Elijah's hand moved. At first, no one noticed. He flipped to a fresh page in his notebook and began writing with precision. No hesitation. No second guesses. Just fluid, deliberate motion. The girl next to him, Emma, a scholarship kid from Oregon, glanced sideways, her eyebrows knit in confusion. As she watched him write, she nudged the boy beside her, who turned to look. Within seconds, a ripple moved through the class. Whitmore looked up. "Elijah," he said, drawing out the name like it tasted strange. "You seem awfully confident back there." Elijah didn't respond. He stood notebook in hand and walked to the front of the room. Silence fell. He reached the board and gently erased the problem. Then, in clean, controlled strokes, he began to solve it. Whitmore's eyes narrowed. Step by step, Elijah reconstructed the logic. He used no notes, no phone, just his mind. Partial derivatives. Chain rule. Integration by parts. Concepts most students in the room only understood on paper, came alive under Elijah's hand. He wasn't just solving it, he was translating it, showing its rhythm, its elegance. When he finished, he stepped back, complete. The room stayed silent. It wasn't just that he'd done it. It was how he'd done it. Smooth, certain, like he belonged on the other side of the lecture hall. Whitmore didn't clap. He walked slowly to the board, staring at the solution like it had personally insulted him. Then, without looking at Elijah, he said, "Where did you copy this from?" The question hit like a slap. Elijah blinked. "I didn't." Whitmore turned. "There's no way you solved this in under 15 minutes. That solution is almost identical to a version I reviewed at a symposium 2 years ago. A version that was never published." The implication landed. Emma's face paled. A boy near the front muttered, "Are you serious?" Elijah's voice was steady. "I've never seen any symposium version. I solved what was on the board." Whitmore's smile didn't reach his eyes. "You expect us to believe you, out of everyone in this room, solved a graduate-level problem with no guidance, no precedent, and no errors?" Elijah didn't answer, not because he couldn't, but because he'd heard that tone before. The disbelief. The subtle shift from skepticism to accusation. It was the same tone people used when asking if he really wrote his own essays, if he really scored that high on the SAT, if he really belonged at Westbridge. The professor turned to the class. Until further notice, this solution will be reviewed for academic integrity violations. If it turns out to be plagiarized, disciplinary action will be taken. The tension in the room turned thick, like humidity before a storm. Elijah stood still, notebook in hand, while his peers looked away. No one stood up for him. No one asked to verify the work on merit. The assumption was enough. There was no way he could have done it. As Elijah turned to return to his seat, he caught Emma's eyes. She looked torn, but she said nothing. Whitmore erased the board without another word. Elijah sat down, and for the first time that semester, the weight of the university's silence pressed against his chest. Outside, the bell rang. But when the classroom fell silent, the professor's response wasn't applause, it was accusation. Elijah Carter wasn't the kind of student Westbridge University advertised. He didn't come from legacy families, boarding schools, or prestigious academies. His high school, a crumbling public school tucked behind a faded strip mall in South St. Louis, was better known for metal detectors and budget cuts than AP calculus or Ivy League ambitions. In fact, when Elijah got his acceptance letter, his guidance counselor blinked twice before asking, "Westbridge?" He'd never forget that pause. It wasn't disbelief rooted in his grades or test scores. Those were nearly perfect. It was disbelief rooted in who he was, where he came from, what he looked like. That pause never left him. He heard it in every professor's raised eyebrow, in every classmate's second glance, in every conversation where someone asked, "So, what program are you here for?" Like they were expecting him to say athletics or diversity outreach, instead of advanced theoretical mathematics. From the beginning, Elijah understood that his presence at Westbridge would be tested, not just academically, but existentially. He knew the burden he carried wasn't just to pass, but to justify his right to be present. Every room he entered, he was asked to re-earn what others took for granted. So he adapted. He made himself smaller. Not physically, Elijah stood a solid 6'1", with quiet posture and a gaze that rarely dropped, but in energy, in voice, in space. While his peers posted photos from debate tournaments and Model UN conferences, Elijah kept his head down and his hoodie up. He avoided campus parties, group projects, study lounges. He wasn't unfriendly, just unseen. To most people, Elijah Carter was background. In lectures, he sat near the back, always scribbling quietly in his weathered composition notebook. His laptop was over 5 years old and missing 2 keys. His shoes were clean, but they'd seen miles. While others wore Apple Watches and Patagonia vests, Elijah layered hand-me-downs. No logos, no flash, just function. He worked nights cleaning classrooms in the science building. Ironically, some of the same rooms where his professors would teach the next morning. He did it for the extra cash to help cover what his partial scholarship and campus job didn't. No one ever asked why he always smelled faintly of disinfectant in morning lectures. No one ever wondered why his eyes looked more tired than everyone else's. He was just the quiet black kid in the back. Harmless. Forgettable. Until the day the unsolvable problem went up on the board and Elijah solved it in front of everyone. That moment cracked something open, and the cracks spread fast. At first, the silence in the classroom felt stunned, almost reverent. But as it lingered, it began to curdle. The glances, the whispers, the uneasy chuckles, as students packed up and slipped out. No one came up to him. No one said that was amazing. No one said anything. Instead, Elijah heard fragments as they passed. Bet he found it online. Probably just memorized something from a prep site. There's no way he came up with that. Someone even said, Whitmore's not gonna let that slide. Not from him. That last one landed hardest, because Elijah knew it was true. Professor Gerald Whitmore was infamous. A mathematician with degrees from Stanford and Oxford. He strutted the campus like he owned it. He was a gatekeeper, one of those professors who claimed to weed out mediocrity. He liked quoting Einstein, demanding precision, and watching students sweat under pressure. He loved genius, but only when it looked familiar. White, male, polished. Everything Elijah was not. So, when Elijah solved the problem, coolly, cleanly, publicly, it didn't earn respect. It triggered suspicion. Not because the work was wrong, but because of who did it. By the time Elijah left the building that day, he could feel the temperature had shifted. Not the weather, the atmosphere. Eyes followed him as he crossed campus. Some students stopped talking when he walked by. Even the receptionist at the math department's front desk didn't meet his gaze like she usually did. That night, he went back to the janitorial closet in the basement of the science hall, pulled out his cart, and started his shift, scrubbing lecture hall floors, emptying trash cans, wiping dry erase boards still ghosted with complex problems and half-baked proofs. At midnight, he sat on a bucket near the loading dock, eating a peanut butter sandwich with a half-drunk bottle of Sprite. He was trying to work through another advanced problem from his independent study, something involving nonlinear dynamics, when his phone buzzed. An email. Subject: mandatory faculty review. Department of Mathematics. Body: you are requested to appear before the Academic Integrity Committee on Thursday, 10:00 a.m. Topic: preliminary investigation into unauthorized academic assistance. Please be prepared to provide supporting documentation. Elijah stared at the screen. No greeting, no explanation. Just the words unauthorized academic assistance. The accusation. His heart didn't race. It sank, like a slow, heavy anchor. He'd expected it. He knew how this place worked. But knowing didn't dull the sting. He spent the rest of the night rewriting the entire equation he'd solved earlier, from memory, line by line, with full notations and reasoning, just in case. Then he printed it out and stuck it in a folder. The next morning, Elijah walked into Whitmore's class like nothing had happened. The classroom was quieter than usual. A few students glanced at him. Others kept their heads down. Whitmore didn't even look at him. He began the lecture without acknowledging Elijah's existence, as if the previous day hadn't happened, as if the board had never been filled with proof and controversy. After class, Elijah waited, hoping, maybe, for an olive branch. A conversation, but Whitmore exited with his usual swagger, and not a single word. Elijah turned to leave, but someone was waiting by the door. Emma, the girl who sat next to him. She was wringing her hands, eyes darting. "Hey," she whispered. I saw what you did. I mean, yesterday. That was amazing." He blinked. "Thanks. I just wanted you to know I told my roommate. She didn't believe me when I said you did it live. Like, no notes. I told her she should have seen it." Elijah nodded. He appreciated it. But something in her tone, it was awe mixed with discomfort, as if she was surprised genius could come in his skin. She stepped aside quickly. "Anyway, good luck with everything." He watched her go. Later that day, in the faculty break room, the conversations took a different turn. One professor mentioned that Carter Kid had caused a stir. Another asked if the department's vetting process was lowering standards to meet diversity quotas. Someone else smirked and said, "You think he really did it? Come on." By the afternoon, the math department chair had called an emergency meeting. Not to celebrate a breakthrough, but to investigate a threat. Elijah wasn't invited to that meeting, but he felt its effects. His student login began returning odd errors. His access to the campus research server was revoked, pending credential re-verification. A graduate TA, who used to send him extra notes, suddenly stopped responding to emails, and his dorm's RA hinted that some questions had been raised about how Elijah got into the honors track. Each change was small, deniable, but unmistakable. It wasn't just that they didn't believe him. They didn't want to. Elijah sat in his dorm room that night, lights off, computer screen casting shadows on his tired face. He opened a new document and began typing everything he remembered about the equation, how he'd visualized it, the steps he'd taken, the reference points from independent reading. He wrote as if preparing for trial, because that's what it had become. By the time the sun rose, he'd compiled 27 pages of detailed annotations. But deep down he knew, evidence didn't always matter. Not here. Not for someone like him. Just as he was about to shut his laptop, another email pinged. From Professor Gerald Whitmore. Subject: meeting request. Body: see me in my office at 5 p.m. today. Bring your original notes. That was it. No explanation, no greeting. Elijah sat back.
This wasn't over.
It was just beginning. But the whispers started before he even left the room. And soon the faculty meeting was called. Westbridge University was known for three things: old money, older traditions, and a reputation for brilliance. But beneath the polished reputation and polished marble halls lay an unspoken truth. Black brilliance was either overlooked or challenged. There was no open policy against it. Of course, Westbridge prided itself on diversity brochures that showcased smiling faces in brochure-perfect harmony. But anyone who paid close attention could see it, feel it. The way black students were rarely included in group projects unless they initiated them. How their answers in class often went unacknowledged until repeated by someone else. The way faculty praised them for being articulate or well-prepared, as though those qualities were surprising. And now, Elijah Carter had disrupted the quiet, coded order of things. By solving that calculus problem, he didn't just outshine the room, he embarrassed the institution. Not because he was wrong, but because he was right, and the people around him weren't ready for that kind of rightness from someone like him. The day after Elijah received the faculty review email, campus felt colder than usual. Even under the soft warmth of the early fall sun, students whispered behind coffee cups. Professors passed him in hallways without acknowledgement. The cleaning staff, those he once worked beside, offered quiet nods of solidarity, but said little. Even they knew the rules of visibility on this campus. Elijah kept his head down and carried the manila folder of proof everywhere he went. It contained every scrap of handwritten logic, every page of annotations, and a breakdown of his solution process, not because he thought it would change minds, but because he knew it might be all he had. What he didn't know was that the faculty lounge was already burning with murmurs. Professor Langley, from the philosophy department, reportedly asked during lunch, why would Whitmore even entertain the possibility that the Carter kid figured it out legitimately? Another chimed in, there's no record of him participating in any math competitions or advanced symposiums. That kind of problem doesn't get solved by accident. A third said, with a patronizing chuckle, I bet he's great at following tutorials. That word tutorials bounced around like an insult, as if intellect only counted when it was verified by the right institutions. Meanwhile, Elijah sat in his advanced number theory class, trying to focus as Professor Klein discussed modular arithmetic. But he could feel the stares, the glances that lingered a second too long. The way students kept shifting their chairs away from his row like his seat carried an unspoken virus. After class, he headed straight to the math department's administrative office to submit his supplementary materials for the investigation. The secretary behind the glass window, an older woman named Mrs. Hunt, took the folder but didn't meet his eyes. Thank you, Elijah, she said flatly, then turned away before he could respond. He lingered for a moment, but the conversation was already over. Outside, the main quad buzzed with students, most oblivious, a few curious. Someone was playing acoustic guitar near the fountain. A group of theater majors rehearsed a scene nearby. But to Elijah, everything felt muted, like he was walking underwater, like every step took more effort than it should. That evening, he returned to his dorm and found a note slid under his door. You made him look bad. What did you think would happen? No signature. No handwriting he recognized. He read it 3 times before folding it neatly and placing it in the back of his math textbook. When Thursday morning arrived, Elijah wore his only ironed button-up shirt. The sleeves were slightly too short, but he rolled them up to make it look intentional. He walked to the administration building alone, folder in hand, and climbed 3 flights of stairs to a meeting room that smelled of lemon-scented polish and judgment. Inside sat 4 faculty members. Professor Whitmore was one of them, arms folded, jaw tight. Beside him, Professor Chan, the only Asian faculty in the math department, who rarely spoke at department events. Across from them sat Dr. Reynolds, the Assistant Dean of Academic Affairs, and Dr. Phillips, head of the Math Review Board. None of them smiled. Mr. Carter, Reynolds began, gesturing to the seat. Please have a seat. We'd like to clarify a few things regarding the incident in Professor Whitmore's class earlier this week. Incident. The word landed like a charge. Elijah sat and placed the folder on the table. I brought a detailed breakdown of my solution, he said. Each step is annotated and includes references to the textbooks and online lectures I used for self-study. Dr. Phillips took the folder and began flipping through it. Whitmore didn't look at it. Self-study? Whitmore interjected. May I ask which lectures exactly? Elijah answered calmly. Several from MIT OpenCourseWare. Specifically Dr. Gilbert Strain's Advanced Calculus series. I also read research papers on multivariable integration and nonlinear systems during summer. Reynolds scribbled something down. You say you watched and understood graduate-level material? Whitmore asked. a sharp tone creeping into his voice. Yes, Elijah said simply. And yet, Whitmore continued, you've never participated in any math competitions? Olympiads? Research forums? No, Elijah replied. I couldn't afford to travel for them, and my high school didn't offer those kinds of opportunities. Silence. Heavy. Loaded. Reynolds cleared his throat. It's not that we don't believe you're capable, Elijah, but you must understand. Solving an unsolved problem in front of a classroom is a highly unusual event. It naturally raises questions. Elijah's voice didn't shake, but something behind it cracked just a little. Unusual doesn't mean impossible. Phillips looked up from the folder. Your work is clean. Impressive, actually. Whitmore cut in. But the timing, Dr. Phillips. And the presentation. It was too perfect. As though rehearsed. Elijah looked him in the eye. I rehearsed in my head. Because I knew if I made one mistake, none of you would believe I did it at all. The room froze. Reynolds adjusted his glasses, caught off guard. Whitmore narrowed his eyes but said nothing. Dr. Chan, silent until now, finally spoke. We'll need time to review this. Until then, we'll place a temporary academic hold on the solution's recognition. You may continue attending classes, but we ask that you not discuss the matter with other students. It was a polite gag order, a shield for the department, not for Elijah. He stood. Understood. He turned to leave, but Whitmore's voice followed him like a shadow. Genius isn't always about doing something first. It's about knowing your place in the process. Elijah didn't respond, because there were no words sharp enough to slice through that kind of polite contempt. As he exited the building, the wind picked up. The sky was turning gray, clouds gathering above the bell tower. He walked through campus with his shoulders straight, but his stomach tight. This wasn't a test of knowledge anymore. It was a test of endurance. And as he passed by the student cafe, a flyer caught his eye, taped sloppily to a bulletin board. Academic fraud isn't brilliance. Elijah Carter is a liar. Typed. Anonymous. But printed on university paper. He stared at it for a long moment, before tearing it down. He didn't say anything. He didn't need to. The next move wasn't his to make, but he knew it was coming. The dean called Elijah in, not to congratulate him, but to interrogate him. The day after the faculty review meeting, the weight of the accusation hadn't lifted. It had only grown heavier. Elijah walked across the quad with the steady gait of someone carrying more than just books. He could feel it in the way people looked at him, not with curiosity anymore, but suspicion, like rotten had been whispered into their ears, and now they couldn't unhear it. His name wasn't just being questioned in academic offices anymore. It was being dissected in dorm lounges, dining halls, and anonymous online forums. A post had gone up on the university's unofficial message board the night before. Black math prodigy, or copycat. Calculus scandal at Westbridge. The comments underneath stung more than he cared to admit. I heard he memorized a published proof. There's no way someone like him did that live. Probably used ChatGPT and rewrote it. Someone even posted a photo from the classroom, the back of Elijah's head at the whiteboard, mid-solution, like a still from a documentary. But there was no caption celebrating brilliance, only speculation, slander, and thinly veiled racism. They said the solution was too advanced. Not too advanced for the class, too advanced for him. By the time Elijah reached room 34 for his next lecture, something felt off. The door was closed. Lights off. A piece of paper was taped to the glass. Section relocated. Check email for new location. Confused. Elijah opened his phone. Nothing in his inbox. No notification. Then a buzz. One new message. Subject. Advising notice. Temporary course restriction. Body. Mr. Carter, please refrain from attending Math 47-2 until further notice. We will contact you regarding alternative accommodations. Academic Affairs Office. No explanation. No due process. Just an administrative lockout. Elijah stared at the screen, numb, banned from his own class. The silence of the hallway pressed in. It was almost cinematic, like the moment in a film where the music drops out, and the camera lingers on the protagonist's face a beat too long. He turned away from the door slowly, aware that two students behind him had paused, whispering. They didn't even bother to lower their voices. Didn't they pull him for cheating? I mean, come on. Look at who it was. Elijah didn't respond. He walked past them, down the stairs, past the display cases full of alumni awards and framed faculty publications. All the things he had once aspired to join now felt like distant relics guarded by a system designed to keep him out. By noon, his phone buzzed again. This time, a summons from the dean's office. When he arrived, the receptionist avoided eye contact. She pointed him to a small waiting room, where a clock ticked too loudly, and the magazines were months out of date. The air smelled of old leather and forced order. After 20 minutes, the door opened.
Elijah Carter?
Dean Lorraine Whitaker didn't look like someone who yelled. She had the poise of a judge and the vocabulary of a diplomat. But her power didn't come from volume. It came from precision, how she measured every word for its potential consequence. Elijah, she said, gesturing for him to enter her office. Please, sit. Her office was warm-toned, lined with books about ethics, leadership, and the university's 50-year history. A large photo behind her desk showed her shaking hands with the governor. Let's get to the point, she said, folding her hands. You're a talented young man. What you did in Professor Whitmore's class was exceptional. But exceptional claims require exceptional scrutiny. I submitted all my notes, Elijah replied. Everything was my own work. Dean Whitaker nodded slowly. Yes, we've reviewed them. Still, your performance raised questions. The accuracy, the speed, it's rare, even among our graduate students. So the problem isn't the solution, Elijah said, his tone even. It's that I was the one who solved it. There it was. The air thickened. Dean Whitaker smiled softly. The kind of smile people use when they're hiding sharp objects behind their backs. This isn't about race, she said too quickly. It's about protocol, academic standards. We can't allow even the perception of impropriety. But the perception only exists because of who I am, Elijah said. You wouldn't be having this conversation if it was anyone else. The smile dropped. Elijah, be careful, she said. Allegations of bias are serious. I'd hate for this to affect your academic standing. There it was. Not a threat, just a warning wrapped in institutional courtesy. She handed him a paper, probationary review notice. Effective immediately, all of Elijah's assignments would be subject to pre-screening. He was temporarily barred from participating in any academic competitions, research assistantships, or public forums representing the university. No formal charges. No hearing. Just silence. Followed by slow suffocation. He left the office without another word. Outside, it had started to drizzle. Elijah didn't open his umbrella. He just walked, letting the cold, misty rain soak into his shirt. It was the only thing that felt real. That evening, he got a text from Emma. Emma. Hi. I'm sorry. This isn't fair. He stared at the message, unsure how to respond. What could he say? That it never was fair? That this wasn't about a math problem, but about a world that didn't know how to process his excellence without doubting it? He didn't reply. Instead, he sat on the floor of his dorm room, notebook open, reworking the same problem again. Not because he needed to, because it was the only thing he could control. And halfway through, something clicked. A pattern he hadn't noticed before. A simplification that made the proof even more elegant. He smiled. Even under suspicion, his mind refused to shrink. But just as the light returned to his eyes, his phone buzzed again. Email, your access to university tutoring centers has been temporarily suspended pending investigation. Another restriction. Another door quietly closed. He sat back, notebook in his lap. Brilliance had made him a threat. And now, the system was isolating him, one policy at a time. And just like that, Elijah was banned from his own class. The storm Elijah thought had passed was only beginning to gather strength. 2 days after he was banned from class, the attacks became darker and more calculated. It started with an anonymous email to the Academic Integrity Office. Subject line: urgent tip regarding Elijah Carter, academic fraud. The content was vague but inflammatory, claiming Elijah had been receiving outside help from anonymous online math tutors in exchange for money. No sender name, no evidence. But it was enough to trigger a new layer of scrutiny. Then came a second email, this one sent to Professor Whitmore directly, CCing the department head and assistant dean. It alleged that Elijah had a known history of disciplinary problems at his high school and may have used forged documents to gain admission. Both claims were false, but the damage wasn't in the truth. It was in the seed of doubt. By the end of that week, Elijah's inbox had 3 meeting requests: a notice from student conduct and a cryptic voicemail from campus security asking to clarify a few things. It wasn't just the administration anymore. It was the students, too. A whisper campaign had begun, fueled by half-truths and subtle racism wrapped in academic concern. In group chats, his name started to disappear. Study groups he once contributed to stopped inviting him. Even professors who once encouraged his questions now avoided eye contact during lectures. In one class, a fellow student leaned over and asked, "Hey, so is it true you hacked some kind of math site?" Elijah didn't answer, not because he couldn't, but because he was too tired to explain that being better didn't mean he'd cheated. That excellence and deceit weren't synonymous just because his skin didn't match the institution's definition of genius. And then, someone went further. Late one night, while walking back from the science building, Elijah found the door to his dorm room ajar. Nothing had been stolen, but someone had been inside. His notebook, the one with his independent solutions and math journal, was gone. The next morning, a photocopy of one of his pages appeared in an email chain forwarded to several professors, anonymously. The subject, proof Carter's work was pre-written. The implication was clear. If he had the work written before the class, he must have cheated. No one asked why a stolen notebook was circulating on faculty email. They just asked Elijah to explain himself. The stress began to show in his face. Dark circles, thinner cheeks. He stopped shaving. He barely ate. The passion that once powered his intellect now felt like a weight dragging him underwater. But still, he didn't stop thinking. He didn't stop calculating. What he did stop was trusting. Even Emma, once warm and sympathetic, had grown distant. Not out of cruelty, but self-preservation. She had an internship to protect, references to earn. Being seen defending Elijah Carter wasn't good for business. He noticed when her voice lost warmth, when she avoided him in the dining hall, when she changed seats in their shared lecture. The walls were closing in, until a phone call came from home. "Elijah, baby," his mother said, her voice tight with worry. "I saw some things online. Is it true? Are they saying you cheated?" He didn't have the heart to lie. "They're not just saying it. They're building a whole damn case." Silence. Then his mother said something unexpected. "I need to send you something I found. It's old, but I think it matters." An hour later, an image came through. A scanned clipping from a dusty old newspaper. "Brilliant math student, expelled after unlikely solution sparks cheating allegation," read the headline. Dated. The photo was grainy, but the boy in it looked familiar. Black, maybe 17 or 18, sharp eyes, holding a textbook under one arm. Elijah stared at the article. Another student. Another accusation. Same university. Same professor. Whitmore. He read the article line by line. The student Jamal Green had solved a different complex calculus problem during an oral exam. Faculty claimed he must have accessed unreleased test materials. He denied it. Was expelled before the semester ended. There was no follow-up article. No apology. Just erasure. But Elijah's mother found a decades-old newspaper clipping, and everything changed. Elijah sat motionless in his dorm room, the grainy newspaper clipping still open on his laptop. The headline stared back like a ghost resurfacing. "Brilliant math student expelled after unlikely solution sparks cheating allegation." Published March. The name beneath the headline. Jamal Green. Black. Young. Talented. Accused. Erased. The article was brief. Maybe 300 words. It framed Jamal's meteoric rise in the university's mathematics department as suspect. It mentioned an inconsistency in his test performance and unusual behavior in class, but it never detailed any wrongdoing. There was no conclusive evidence, no quote from Jamal, just a narrative of suspicion and a swift end. Elijah read the article 3 times, absorbing every line, every omission. Jamal hadn't just been expelled, he'd been scrubbed. The next morning, Elijah skipped breakfast. He walked straight to the Westbridge University Library, to a place most students never visited. Special collections and archives. The archivist behind the counter was an elderly man in a maroon cardigan, his nameplate reading Mr. Denton. He looked up as Elijah approached. "Faculty only," Denton muttered, without looking up. "I'm researching a case for my thesis," Elijah replied calmly. "Bias in academic misconduct proceedings." Denton paused. "You got departmental approval?" Elijah pulled a forged letterhead from his pocket, typed and printed the night before. He had taken it from a sample in the Student Resources Center. He didn't like lying, but truth hadn't gotten him very far lately. Denton squinted at it, sighed, and buzzed him through. No photographs. Gloves on with originals. Sign in. The door clicked open. Elijah stepped into the chilled room, filled with dust, shadows, and forgotten history. He didn't know exactly what he was looking for, but he knew it was there. He began with yearbooks. He found Jamal Green's photo in the 1992 edition, buried in the back among the STEM majors. No caption, just a serious face among a dozen others. The face looked like it hadn't smiled in years. Next, student newspapers. In a March issue from that year, he found a small blurb. Student withdraws amid academic controversy. The article named no one, but described an upper-level math student who had departed under unclear circumstances. It cited unusual academic performance, an ongoing faculty review. No follow-up article, no statement, just a vanishing. He requested the faculty meeting minutes from the same month. The archivist returned with a box of yellowing folders labeled Academic Affairs. Spring. Elijah flipped through the pages until he found one titled March. A single sentence buried halfway through the meeting summary. Prof. Whitmore raised concerns regarding student performance anomaly in Math 47-2. Department recommends immediate review and resolution. That was it. No vote, no rebuttal, no details. But Whitmore's name was there. The same professor, the same room, the same accusation. Elijah requested student disciplinary records next. Restricted, Denton said firmly. Only available with dean's permission. Elijah nodded. Of course. But he wasn't finished. He left special collections and went back to his room, booted up his laptop, and began digging digitally. The Westbridge alumni database yielded nothing under Jamal Green. No graduation record, no degree, no clubs, no alumni update, like he'd never existed. But Elijah widened his search into blogs, forums, and message boards. Hours passed, dozens of dead ends, until finally, deep in a 209 teaching forum, he found a comment on a thread titled, "Why I Left Academia." It read, "I watched a brilliant black student get chewed up at Westbridge, solved something none of us could. They buried him, said he cheated. That professor still teaches there." Elijah's heart stopped. He created an anonymous profile and replied, "Please. I need more information." His name was Jamal Green. Right? I think it's happening again. He left his email. 3 days passed. No response. Then on a rainy Thursday afternoon, his phone buzzed. One new message. From Dr. Voss, DX Professor. A proton mail. Subject, Rid Jamal Green. Body. Yes. His name was Jamal Green. He didn't cheat. He was too fast, too accurate, too black. I taught his freshman calculus class. I fought for him. They buried me too. Dr. Lena Voss. Elijah sat motionless, rereading the message over and over. Dr. Voss. He searched the faculty records. Lena Voss had been an associate professor at Westbridge from 1987 to 1993. Then she vanished from academic listings. He emailed again. "Will you speak with me?" She replied within hours. "Not over email. Too risky. Come see me. I'm in Maple Hollow. Address below." It was a small town 2 hours away. That Saturday, Elijah took a Greyhound bus. From the final stop, he walked 3 miles along cracked sidewalks until he reached a modest blue house with chipped paint and a wind chime made of spoon. She opened the door before he knocked. "You look just like him," she said. Elijah nodded. "Jamal?" She stepped aside. "Come in." Inside, her home was quiet. Books lined every wall, framed equations, photos of a life in exile. She led him to a kitchen table, laid out tea, and sat opposite him like she'd been waiting years. "I never thought I'd talk about this again," she said. "They made sure of that." "What happened to him?" Elijah asked. She closed her eyes. He solved a problem. In room 304, something Whitmore had teased for years, claimed no undergrad could touch. Jamal solved it, right in front of him. Clean, elegant, terrifying. What happened next? Accusations. His dorm was randomly searched. They claimed he had stolen solution notes. There was no hearing, no appeal. He was gone within a week. And you. I tried to defend him, wrote letters, requested meetings. The administration labeled me emotionally compromised. I was placed on leave for insubordination. I never returned. Did he ever speak out? He was too afraid. Said the damage was done. Changed his name. Moved west. Vanished. She slid a folder across the table. Inside, scanned letters. Her formal complaint to the academic board. Emails from students supporting Jamal. A typed letter from Jamal himself. Never sent. They fear what they can't control. We're not their idea of brilliance. We're a threat to the story they tell about themselves. Elijah's hands shook as he read. They erased him, he whispered.
Voss nodded. And now they're trying to erase you.
He looked up. But I won't let them. She smiled. For the first time. Then take all of this. Let them see what they buried. Back at campus, Elijah scanned the entire folder. Hundreds of pages. He backed them up 3 times. Drive, cloud, email. He printed physical copies. Then he went back to the archives. Requested the faculty review files from 1993, the year after Jamal was expelled. There, buried in administrative paperwork, was a memo. Prof. Whitmore's tenure recommendation. Approved unanimously. Demonstrated leadership in upholding academic standards. His rise on the ashes of someone else's destruction. History wasn't repeating, it was replicating. And Elijah was the next name on the list. But this time, he wasn't alone. And he wasn't going quietly. Elijah began digging into the archives, and what he found was erased for a reason. The wall in Elijah's dorm room looked more like an evidence board than a student study space, lined with yellowing news clippings, red marker connections, photocopied disciplinary records, and scanned memos. It resembled a conspiracy, but this one wasn't imagined. This one was real, and he was living it. It started with Jamal Green. But it didn't end there. As Elijah dug through archived faculty minutes, student tribunal reports, and alumni forum posts, a disturbing truth crystallized. He wasn't the first. He was one of many. One of many brilliant black students who had dared to be exceptional at Westbridge, and paid the price. There was Deshaun Marks, a junior in 2004. Known for his coding genius, he reportedly developed an encryption tool as part of an independent study. A week later, his advisor accused him of using outside consultants, and the university charged him with academic dishonesty. Expelled. Next was Avery Tate, a pre-med chemistry major in 2011. She replicated an experimental compound synthesis after months of late-night lab hours, only to be accused of falsifying results. Her work was confiscated. Her lab privileges revoked. No appeal. Gone. Then came Kyle Bessman in 2016. A mathematics prodigy who'd solved a matrix model in class that even his graduate TA hadn't fully understood. His work was submitted for peer review, only to be flagged for possible pre-existing source overlap. He withdrew 2 weeks later. No graduation record. No trace. Elijah traced it all. He built a timeline. Each case was different in detail but identical in essence. Black brilliance. Unexplainable excellence. Institutional discomfort. Accusation. Erasure. They'd all vanished behind polite language. Integrity reviews. Academic irregularities. Unconfirmed sources. None of them were ever proven guilty. None were ever publicly vindicated. Elijah began emailing anyone he could find. Alumni, former professors, teaching assistants, even old staff directory names. Some ignored him. A few replied saying they remembered that situation, but couldn't say more. One wrote back, "Be careful, Elijah. Westbridge has a way of protecting itself." Still, he pressed on. Late one night, he posted anonymously on a private black alumni forum tied to the university, looking for former Westbridge students of color who left under unexplained circumstances, especially in STEM. If you experienced institutional pushout, please contact me. Discretion guaranteed. He didn't expect much, but within 24 hours he had 5 responses. 3 were dead ends. 1 was a prank.
But the 5th?
The 5th changed everything. Uname Calculus 4.
Message.
I know what they did to Jamal. I watched it happen. I was almost next. Elijah's heart raced. He messaged back immediately. Please. Can we talk? A few minutes passed. Then, not on this platform. Too risky. Here's my number. Elijah called that same night. The line picked up on the second ring. Who is this? The voice was deep. Measure. Elijah Carter, he said. I'm a math student at Westbridge. They're targeting me. I think I'm going through the same thing Jamal did. I've found records, files, even connected with Dr. Lena Voss. The man went silent. Then almost in a whisper, where are you now? My dorm, on campus. The man didn't reply for a moment. Then, not safe. Meet me tomorrow. Old Greyhound Station. 12 noon. No one with you. Click. The line went dead. The next day, Elijah showed up early. The terminal was mostly abandoned, graffiti-tagged walls, flickering bulbs, and a vending machine that hadn't been restocked in years. At 12:07, a black sedan pulled up. Out stepped a man, mid-50s, lean, serious. He wore a simple gray coat and carried a worn leather notebook under one arm. "You Elijah?" he asked. "Yes." They sat down on a nearby bench, silence hanging heavy between them. "I go by Thomas now," the man said. "But I used to be Malik Rowan. Class of..." Elijah blinked. The name was familiar. He'd seen it in an old directory listing. Then the name had vanished from university records post-sophomore year. "I was a math major," Thomas continued. "Top of my class. Maybe the best they'd ever seen." "What happened?" Thomas looked out at the cracked pavement. "They couldn't discredit my work outright. So they turned the faculty against me. My advisors started losing my research notes. I stopped getting TA support. My funding vanished. Then the whispers started. Accusations of plagiarism. They never charged me. But they didn't have to. I left before finals." "And Jamal?" "He was 2 years before me. I saw what happened to him. It was the blueprint." "Why didn't you speak out?" Thomas's voice hardened. "Because no one listens. And I needed to survive. I changed my name, moved across the country, and never looked back. But I kept this." He handed Elijah the leather notebook. Inside were rows of handwritten equations, journal entries, and copies of disciplinary notices. Elijah flipped to one page labeled Internal Evaluation Whitmore. There it was again.
Whitmore!
"He flagged me for unverifiable methods," Thomas said. "Said my solutions lacked proper citation. But there were no published methods. It was my work." Elijah's hands shook. "This isn't a pattern anymore," he said. "It's policy." Thomas leaned in. "You want to go public, don't you?" "Yes." "You'll lose everything."
"I already am."
Thomas exhaled, nodding slowly. "Then take this. And take this name. Someone even Whitmore couldn't silence." He scribbled on a piece of scrap paper. "Henry Wallace." "Who is he?" Thomas's eyes twinkled. "He solved the same problem Jamal did. But before Jamal, he's still alive. Changed his name. Hid away. But he kept something." "What?" Thomas stood. "A secret they never meant to leave room 304. And one of them was still alive, living under a new name, with a secret." For days, Elijah couldn't stop thinking about the name Thomas had whispered to him, Henry Wallace. The name didn't exist in any of Westbridge's modern databases. No graduation records, no published thesis, no alumni event mentions. It was like chasing a ghost. Except Elijah already knew this ghost had lived, and it had been buried. He searched harder. Academic archives, JSTOR, Google Scholar. He didn't expect a direct hit, but he was looking for a fragment, a footnote, a whisper, anything. Finally, he found it. In a 1986 paper on advanced differential equations, a single line in a footnote caught his eye, based in part on methods discussed in Wallace's unpublished manuscript, Westbridge Mathematics Department. There it was, buried, unpublished, uncredited, unspoken. Elijah searched every variation of the name. Finally, through a tax database tied to old faculty ID numbers, he discovered a legal name change filed in Henry Wallace had become Dr. Emery Wynne. Location Vermont. Occupation private math tutor. Elijah booked a bus ticket. The journey north felt like a pilgrimage. The further he got from campus, the quieter it became. Trees stood skeletal in the late winter cold. Frozen lakes gleamed like glass. Small towns drifted by like moments from another life. 12 hours later, he stepped off the bus into a village that looked untouched by time. A general store, a diner, a post office. He found the address in the outskirts, a small white house with weather-worn shutters, surrounded by pines. He stood at the doorstep, breath catching in clouds. He knocked. No answer. He knocked again. The door creaked open slowly. A tall, lean black man stood behind the screen. His gray sweater hung loose over broad shoulders. He looked about 60, sharp eyes, deep-lined face, wary. "Yes. Are you Dr. Emery Wynne?" "Depends who's asking." "My name's Elijah Carter. I think you used to be Henry Wallace, and I think we've both been victims of the same man." The old man didn't blink, but Elijah saw something shift in his eyes. Recognition. "Come in." The inside of the house smelled of dust, chalk, and strong black coffee. Books were stacked in columns. Chalkboards leaned against the walls, covered in symbols and partial theorems. The room was equal parts sanctuary. And you know Jamal Green? Elijah asked, as they sat. Henry, Amory nodded slowly. Brilliant kid. Too brilliant. They buried him. They always do. I think it's happening again, Elijah said. To me, Emery gave a hollow chuckle. Of course it is. They need it to. They need one of us to fall so the others don't climb. You solved it first, didn't you? Elijah asked. 1987, Emery said. Winter term. Same problem. Different disguise. You solved it in front of Whitmore? No. I submitted it in private. Didn't want attention. Just wanted the truth to live somewhere. He paused. 3 days later, my dorm was searched. They claimed I'd broken into a faculty office, that I'd copied from a professor's unpublished draft. But there was no draft. It was just an excuse. They expelled you? They erased me, quietly, made it look like I dropped out. His voice tightened. They didn't just erase my name from Westbridge. They erased it from academia. Elijah was silent. Emery stood and walked to a filing cabinet. He unlocked it and pulled out a manila envelope, worn at the edges. He handed it to Elijah. Inside was a handwritten proof. Smooth, clean, elegant. Each line familiar. Too familiar. It was almost identical to Elijah's. I wrote that at 21, Emery said. Tried to publish it. No one would touch it. They said it was too derivative. When I asked what it was derivative of, they stopped responding. Elijah studied the paper, then looked up. Whitmore. He was new then, Emery said. Just a guest lecturer at the time. But even back then, he had the ear of the department. Always spoke in coded language. Fit, pedigree, appropriateness. Elijah's voice trembled. He built his career on destroying people like us. No, Emery corrected gently. He built his authority that way. His career was built on stolen time, stolen credit, stolen futures. He doesn't care about math. He cares about control. And this equation,
It's bait.
Emery said. A problem so thorny and obscure that only the truly obsessed will attempt it. And when someone cracks it, especially a student of color, they use it as proof that you couldn't have done it honestly. Elijah sat back, stunned. So this problem, this test, it's never been about finding genius. It's been about filtering it out. Elijah gripped the envelope. Why give this to me? Emery's eyes softened. Because I've been waiting for someone like you, for 30 years. Someone who wouldn't vanish. Someone who couldn't be erased quietly. Elijah felt a lump rise in his throat. You're going to face everything I did, Emery said. And worse. They've evolved. They don't just expel you now. They discredit you online. They blackball you from fellowships. They paint you as unstable, unprofessional, angry. Is there anyone who ever listened to you? Only one, Emery said. A professor who resigned the same year I disappeared. Dr. Lena Voss. I met her, Elijah said. She gave me Jamal's file. Emery smiled faintly. Then you've already started burning the edges of the board. A silence settled between them. Then Emery reached into his coat pocket. He pulled out another envelope, sealed thick, with a red string around it. Inside is everything I couldn't publish. My full proof. Letters. The original departmental response. Even Whitmore's signed memo accusing me. Elijah hesitated. This is huge. This is dangerous, Emery corrected. If you reveal this, they will come after you. They won't try to debate you. They'll try to disqualify you. Personally, morally, institutionally. I don't care. You should. But I don't. Emery stared at him for a long moment, then handed the envelope over. You'll be next. Elijah took it with both hands. And for the first time he realized this wasn't just about a problem, or a professor, or a university. It was about a machine, polite, smiling, efficient, that had chewed up black excellence for decades under the guise of upholding standards. But now, he had something it hadn't seen coming. He had the full truth. He handed Elijah a sealed envelope and warned, "You'll be next." Elijah's heart pounded as he prepared the formal complaint. He sat at his desk surrounded by the fruits of his research. Dr. Voss's files, Thomas's notebook, Henry Wallace's sealed envelope. Every scrap built an undeniable case. It was a web of stolen recognition, silenced students, erased records. It was proof that Professor Gerald Whitmore's entire career was built, not just on teaching brilliance, but on burying it. He had stayed up all night crafting every word. The complaint lay open on his laptop, addressed to the university's ethics board and academic integrity council. The document detailed multiple incidents: Jamal Green in 1992, Henry Wallace in 1987, Deshaun Marks, Avery Tate, Thomas formerly Malik Rowan, and now Elijah himself. It included copies of faculty meeting minutes, anonymous emails, testimonies from alumni, and the proof Wallace had kept hidden. The stakes were high. That morning, Elijah walked into Whitmore's class with the complaint folder in his backpack. He sat in his usual spot, near the back. The room smelled of dry erase marker and polished wood. Whitmore entered, greeted the class with his usual good morning, his eyes sweeping the room. When he saw Elijah, Whitmore paused, as though detecting a shift in the air. Elijah held his gaze. After class, Elijah went to the ethics board office. It was in a low building, center campus. He opened his folder, printed pages rustling. The secretary looked up, startled, but didn't ask questions. She directed him to a small conference room. The ethics board consisted of 5 people: the chair, Dr. Reynolds, an associate professor in philosophy, the head of student affairs, a senior faculty member from STEM, and an external ethics advisor. Elijah laid out his evidence. He spoke slowly, measured. No anger, but deep weariness. Each slide he showed, pictures of the old newspaper clippings, transcripts of anonymous emails, Wallace's proof, minutes referencing performance anomalies, flagged by Whitmore, testimonies from former students. Some of the board members frowned. Others remained expressionless. Whitmore sat in the back, arms crossed. Dr. Reynolds cleared his throat.
Mr. Carter, this is a serious accusation against tenured faculty, against legacy. Do you understand what you're asking us to do?
Elijah nodded. Yes, philosophy professor, quiet before spoke. These are heavy claims. They suggest misconduct, abuse of academic power, suppression of academic freedom. We will review them. Whitmore's voice came sharp. Some of this is hearsay, anonymous, and some documents unverified. You are alleging decades of actions without a single one of them being substantiated in public. Elijah kept his voice calm. Verification is exactly what I'm providing. Wallace's proof. Archival minutes. Personal accounts. The fact that nothing was made public before doesn't make it false. It means the system kept it silent. The associate professor asked Dr. Reynolds, "What's our procedure here? Do we need external reviewers? Will Whitmore be notified officially?" Dr. Reynolds nodded. "We must follow due process. We'll bring in external ethics experts. We'll request all relevant faculty records, terabytes if necessary. We need full transparency." There was a tension in the air. The external advisor cleared his throat. "Mr. Carter, your scholarship and grants, are those in good standing?" Elijah swallowed. "Yes. As of now, be aware," the advisor said, "that submitting a complaint of this magnitude can trigger reviews of funding eligibility, department assignments, sometimes even scholarship status." Elijah didn't flinch. "I understand." The board recessed. They asked him to leave copies. Whitmore left shortly after. Elijah walked out knowing the battle had begun. That afternoon, the campus felt different. Students looked at him with curiosity, some with disdain. Posters in classrooms, unofficial ones, had already changed. "Trust the process, or trust the silence," one read. Another, "Academic integrity for all, or institutional racism." Elijah returned to his room and opened an email from Financial Aid and Scholarship Services. His heart stuttered when he saw the subject line. Notification regarding scholarship status. He clicked. Effective immediately, his merit scholarship was suspended pending review. No explanation. Just that due to recent developments in student status and ongoing investigation, funding is withheld until further notice. The ground beneath him dropped. He called Emma later that night. Have you heard what happens when someone does what I did?" he asked. She paused, voice quiet. "People get ostracized," she said. "Sometimes expelled, sometimes their careers just stall." Elijah closed his eyes. He felt cold, exposed. The next morning he tried to access his scholarship funds for tuition. The account was frozen. His name flagged. He went to the bursar's office. They told him he needed authorization from the Academic Affairs Office and Scholarship Review Committee. He left in a daze. By late afternoon, email landed from Department of Mathematics to Elijah Carter. Subject: Notice of academic standing concerns. They claimed his recent allegations had created a disruption in department integrity. They gave him 72 hours to meet with the department head, or risk formal probation for the semester. It was a warning. Elijah stared at the screen. He realized something cold. The very institution he trusted to protect learning, fairness, inquiry was now using its power against him. He thought of Jamal Green, of Henry Wallace, of Thomas Malik Rowan, every name of the erased. His complaint threatened Whitmore. It threatened the lie. Whitmore's career, his tenure, his prestige, everything depended on silence. Elijah submitted his formal complaint to the ethics board. Then his scholarship vanished. Elijah submitted his formal complaint to the ethics board. Then his scholarship vanished. The storm didn't come with thunder. It came with hashtags. Math fraud, clout chaser, affirmative action backfire. Elijah Carter didn't know who leaked the ethics complaint he'd filed. But once it hit the public, it spread like a virus. Screenshots of the report, his name, his accusations against Professor Whitmore, and even redacted scans of Henry Wallace's 1987 proof started circulating on Twitter, Reddit, Instagram academic gossip pages, and anonymous forums. The framing was cruel, intentionally twisted. Westbridge sophomore claims he cracked impossible calculus problem. Also believes in unicorns. Student says tenured professor stole his math problem. Plot twist. Student never passed Calc 2. Another day, another genius, trying to cancel excellence. The comments stung more than the headlines. He doesn't even look like a math prodigy. Bet this was all for a Netflix deal. This is what happens when universities lower standards. And suddenly, Elijah's name, once spoken only in hushed admiration after solving Whitmore's legendary problem, was now synonymous with delusion. He logged off social media that first night, but it didn't matter. The damage was offline too. Monday morning, the stares started. In the dining hall. In the quad. Students paused their conversations when he walked by. Some giggled. A few scowled. A classmate in his linear algebra course shifted their chair a few inches away. The TA skipped over him when asking for input. By lunchtime, flyers began appearing. Unofficial, unbranded, but unmistakable. Lying is not a proof. You're not a genius just because you say so. In the student union building, someone had scrawled in marker above a water fountain.
Elijah must see evidence.
His inbox filled with spam. Fake requests for interviews. Doctored screenshots. Someone even created a parody profile of him on Instagram, claiming he was selling impossible math problems for The jokes wrote themselves, but Elijah wasn't laughing. He'd built his academic identity on truth. Precision. Quiet brilliance. Now none of that mattered. He was just another punchline in a culture that ate its own and devoured black excellence twice as fast. Emma stopped texting. She hadn't said much since the complaint was filed, but now she was silent. He saw her one day across the library. She turned away. Then came the public betrayals. His high school calculus teacher, Mr. Jennings, someone who once told Elijah he'd change the field, posted on Facebook, "Elijah was always a good student, but not that good. This whole situation seems exaggerated." That post went viral in its own right. Even the support he thought he had started to fade. The Student Diversity Council, who once featured him in a spotlight piece, deleted the article from their website. His name was removed from the upcoming campus research symposium. Then came the worst email of all. Subject: Westbridge Mathematics Department Statement. To all students, the Department of Mathematics affirms its commitment to integrity, excellence, and the pursuit of truth. Recent events have raised serious concerns about the spreading of unverified accusations that jeopardize not only reputations, but the academic fabric of our institution. We urge students to refrain from participating in speculation or falsehoods. No names, but everyone knew who it was about. Whitmore hadn't just survived Elijah's complaint. He was thriving under the backlash. Elijah stayed in his room. He barely ate. He stopped going to class. Emails piled up unread. The door to his dorm room became a bulletin board for passive-aggressive notes. Prove this is your room. Guess math isn't your language after all. By Friday, he received a notice from the Office of Student Conduct. Not a punishment, but a warning. Your behavior, including public accusations and disruption of department operations, has led to concerns about your suitability to continue within your current academic trajectory. Please schedule a compliance check-in within 5 days. They weren't just questioning his scholarship anymore. They were questioning his place. He lay awake Saturday night staring at the ceiling. In just a few weeks, he'd gone from anonymous genius to national scandal. And for what? For the truth? For daring to be right? He thought of Henry Wallace, of Thomas, of Jamal. All erased. All pushed out. Was this just his turn? He turned to his laptop, intending to shut it down, when a new email landed in his inbox. The subject line stopped him cold. From Dr. Yvonne Matsuoka. Subject: your proof, and your courage. He blinked. She was a name he recognized. A MacArthur Genius Fellow. One of the most celebrated mathematicians in the world. Tenured at MIT. Widely respected. Untouchable. With shaking hands, he opened the message. Mr. Carter, I have seen the materials circulating online, including the proof you submitted and the associated documentation. I reviewed the original version of this equation when I was a graduate student, back when Henry Wallace's name first appeared, then disappeared. What happened to him was unjust. What's happening to you is an academic tragedy.
I've reviewed your proof. It is not only valid, but elegant. Your reasoning mirrors some of Wallace's, but your approach shows independence and clarity.
I'm reaching out because I believe your voice should not be silenced. If you're willing, I'd like to talk. You are not alone. Dr. Yvonne Matsuoka. Elijah stared at the screen. Then read it again. And again. Some part of him buried under the hurt, the mockery, the lies felt warmth flicker. He wasn't crazy. He wasn't wrong. He was seen. He typed back. Yes, I would be honored. He hit send. And for the first time in weeks, Elijah Carter exhaled. But when a renowned mathematician reached out, Elijah saw a crack of light. Elijah Carter barely slept the night before, not out of fear but out of disbelief. After weeks of being mocked, discredited, and isolated, he now held in his inbox something nearly unthinkable, a formal invitation to speak at the Global Symposium on Mathematical Advancement, the world's most prestigious mathematics gathering, held annually in Geneva, Switzerland. The email was signed by Dr. Yvonne Matsuoka, the same woman who had reached out after seeing his proof online. But this was more than an academic endorsement. It was a lifeline, a statement, a declaration to the world that Elijah was not only real, he was right.
No undergraduate had ever spoken at the symposium before, especially not one being investigated by his own university for conduct violations, stemming from unfounded academic claims.
But Elijah wasn't packing to impress the world. He was packing to confront it. He carefully folded a clean button-down shirt, slid his printed proof into a hard case, added the scanned files of Henry Wallace's decades-old work, and tucked in the envelope Wallace had handed him. The one with the handwritten accusation from Whitmore himself. His phone buzzed. Dr. Matsuoka.
Board your flight. I'll meet you at arrivals. You'll do fine. They can't stop the truth.
But they were already trying. He arrived at the airport early, taking no chances. The check-in line was short. He approached the desk, handed over his passport and gave the booking number Matsuoka's assistant had sent. The airline rep typed into her system, then frowned. Just a second. She walked away and returned with a manager. Mr. Carter. It appears there's a hold on this reservation. Are you affiliated with Westbridge University? Elijah's heart sank. Yes, but this trip isn't school-related. It's a private academic engagement. Unfortunately, we've received a travel hold notice linked to your student status. Until it's cleared, we can't issue a boarding pass. He stood there stunned. This is a personal ticket, paid in full. You can't deny me travel because of a university I'm not even representing. The manager shook her head. It's not our policy. The flag came through Homeland Academic Clearance. What the hell is that? It's a database for international academic travel flagged by institutional restriction. You'll need university authorization. He stepped away and called every number listed under Westbridge's Academic Affairs Office. 3 straight voicemails. Finally, on the 4th call, someone picked up. Dean Halston. Elijah, came the familiar voice, calm and cold. Didn't expect to hear from you. Traveling somewhere? You know where. You blocked my flight. There are protocols for students under investigation. International appearances reflect on the institution. This is retaliation. No, it's a precaution. Halston replied smoothly. Good luck with your future endeavors, Mr. Carter. Click. Elijah stood in the terminal. Stunned. Then angry. Then clear. He called Dr. Matsuoka.
They blocked me.
She didn't miss a beat. Good. That means they're scared. Now send me your slides. We'll go remote. That night, In a borrowed conference room of a hotel near the airport, Elijah sat alone in front of a laptop. A tech team from the symposium logged in via Zoom. They tested lighting, adjusted his audio, refined the backdrop. Just a simple blue curtain, no distraction. "You good?" one technician asked. Elijah nodded. At 8:00 a.m. Geneva time, the symposium opened. At 11:45 a.m., a last-minute session was added to the program. The silenced equation, a proof, a pattern, a protest, presented by Elijah Carter, remote. In Geneva, the room filled beyond capacity. Hundreds of mathematicians, academics, journalists, and students packed in. The live stream was promoted across the symposium's website, already drawing tens of thousands. The screen lit up. Elijah appeared, centered in frame, calm. He began. "My name is Elijah Carter. I'm a mathematics student from Westbridge University. Today I'm not here to accuse. I'm here to reveal." He launched into the equation Whitmore had made infamous, the unsolvable monster problem. He broke it down step by step, showing his process. The logic was crystalline. The proof was airtight. A camera panned across the audience, nodding heads, raised eyebrows. Then he switched slides. Jamal Green, Henry Wallace, Iveri Tate, Deshaun Marks, each name accompanied by a face, a date, a department. He told their stories. Each of them had solved something, discovered something, outshone expectation, and each had vanished, erased. "This isn't a coincidence," Elijah said. "It's a pattern, one that's older than I am." He held up Wallace's proof, showed the signatures, showed the memo. Then came the slides of internal emails, department memos, meeting minutes, and finally, he returned to his own work. This wasn't just about math. It was about a system that decides who gets to be seen as brilliant and who gets buried for it. He paused. "They told me I faked this, that I stole it, that I didn't belong in the classroom, much less the conversation. But what I really did was refuse to disappear." The room in Geneva erupted in applause. Online, the livestream surged past 200,000 viewers. In the chat, "They tried to bury him. This kid just made history." Where is Westbridge's response? Back in the US, Elijah sat back in his chair, breathless. Within hours, his presentation became a trending topic. Clips flooded Twitter and TikTok. "Black math student exposes generational academic racism." Lie. "This speech will be in history books." Cancel culture? More like correction culture. Even major news outlets picked it up. CNN, young mathematicians protest goes global. NPR, students' proof sparks academic reckoning. BBC, silenced student finds global stage. His inbox exploded. Messages from professors, mentors, strangers, former Westbridge students. One caught his eye. From Lena Voss. Subject: "You lit the match. I watched. I cried. I never thought I'd live to see someone break the silence. They can't touch you now." He smiled. But only for a moment. Because an hour later, Dr. Matsuoka texted. The dean called. "Westbridge is panicking. Expect noise, but also expect change." What happened on stage was broadcast live, and the world was watching. The world had seen the broadcast. But what happened next? What Elijah did next was what truly made history. The live stream had barely ended when requests started pouring in. Media interviews, invitations to speak, offers from Ivy League institutions to collaborate, to transfer to take graduate-level courses as a sophomore. His inbox became a storm of praise, curiosity, and ambition. But Elijah didn't care about celebrity. He didn't want airtime. He wanted truth. He wanted the math, and he wanted the silence to break. So he did the unthinkable. He scheduled a second stream, just him, a whiteboard, and the equation. No stage, no applause, no media team, just mathematics. Thousands tuned in, then tens of thousands. The room behind him was plain. A dorm lounge he'd borrowed for the hour. The lighting was harsh, the camera angle imperfect. But no one cared. Because Elijah Carter was about to do what no one else had ever done. Solve the problem. Live, without notes, in full view of the world. He started not with flair, but with foundations. "Let's begin with the core assumptions," he said. "Not the shortcuts, not the tricks, just the rules." He moved slowly, patiently, defining variables, establishing the structure of the problem. Then, piece by piece, he rebuilt the impossible equation, scaffolding it in logic, anchoring it in first principles. Spectators around the world watched in awe. He didn't reference his notes. He didn't pause to look anything up. He remembered every layer, every shift, every symbolic maneuver. But it wasn't robotic. It was beautiful. The way he transitioned between multivariable calculus and real analysis. The way he unfolded linear transformations, like a story. The way he paused, not for show, but to think. It wasn't a performance. It was a revelation. In real time, in full view, Elijah reconstructed a problem the academic world had dismissed as unsolvable, except by divine genius. And here he was, a 20-year-old black student, accused of cheating just weeks earlier, teaching it. Midway through, the chat lit up. Professor at Stanford here. I'm stunned. There's no way to fake this. No AI, no script. This is mastery. The department owes him an apology. A big one. He kept going. By the time he reached the final layer, the solution's clean reduction into a previously undocumented equation, he paused. A brief silence filled the stream. Then, calmly, Elijah wrote the final line. QED. The board was full. The problem was solved. He turned to the camera. Now that I've done that, he said quietly, let's talk about the cost. He held up a new sheet of paper. Not math this time. It was a chart, names, dates, accusations. Red ink circled familiar faces. Henry Wallace, Jamal Green, Thomas Rowan, Avery Tate. All of them, Elijah said, solved versions of this problem before I did. All of them were silenced. He held up another page. This one was more damning. A memo dated 1992, signed by Professor Gerald Whitmore, accusing Jamal Green of unauthorized access to advanced material. But there was no such material, Elijah said. Just a young black man doing what they didn't expect. He pulled out Henry Wallace's letter, another accusation, and then another. 4 students, 4 gifted minds, 4 lives derailed by the same man. Elijah looked directly into the camera, and the professor who silenced them. He said, the man who called me a fraud in front of my peers, who made sure I couldn't board a plane, who turned the university against its own student. He took a breath. Professor Gerald Whitmore. The name hung in the air like a stone dropped in water. The chat paused, shocked into silence, then exploded. He said it. This is what justice sounds like. Cancel tenure. Start accountability. Moments later, Expose Whitmore began trending. Journalists clipped the final 3 minutes and blasted it across every major platform. The clip hit 1 million views within the hour. Elijah closed his laptop quietly, not with triumph, but with resolve. He hadn't just solved a problem, he had named it. And then he named the professor who had stolen from 4 other students before him. Professor Gerald Whitmore had once been the face of Westbridge University, a symbol of academic rigor, the white-haired, steel-eyed mathematician, whose stern face had graced fundraising campaigns, alumni newsletters, and even the walls of freshman orientation. For decades his name had been synonymous with excellence, the man who mentored champions, the professor whose published proofs were studied across departments. He wasn't just respected, he was revered. When donors visited campus, they asked to meet him. When struggling students needed motivation, advisors pointed to his office. If you work hard enough, they'd say, you might end up in Whitmore's seminar. But within days of Elijah Carter's public accusation, that carefully polished reputation began to collapse. It started with a whisper, an anonymous email to the University Ethics Board. Then a second. This one included scanned pages. Henry Wallace's 1987 proof. Annotated, dated. A third came from an alumni network, attaching an internal memo marked confidential, dated 9. The subject line, student complaint, Rowan T. Suddenly the rumors weren't just noise, they were evidence. By the end of the week, Westbridge was forced to break its silence. The university has opened a full and independent investigation into allegations concerning Professor Gerald Whitmore. We reaffirm our commitment to academic integrity, justice, and transparency. No faculty member is exempt from accountability. It sounded principled, but behind closed doors the university was spiraling. Emails leaked. Alumni demanded answers. Students protested outside the administration building. Hashtags flooded academic Twitter. Fire Whitmore. Elijah was right. Math stolen. Journalists flooded the campus. News vans lined the street outside the mathematics department. CNN celebrated professor faces allegations of theft and suppression. Vice, a black student solved the problem, then he solved the system. The Atlantic. What happens when genius isn't white enough? The pressure mounted. Then came the real blow. The university's internal whistleblower, an assistant in the archives department, sent a packet to every major outlet. Inside, a redacted memo recommending Whitmore's dismissal and a second memo overruling it, citing donor relations. A private document labeled Reputation Containment Strategy, dated the same week Elijah's video went viral. It included pre-written faculty tweets, media responses, and instructions to reframe the narrative as a generational misunderstanding. Westbridge hadn't been caught off guard. They had prepared for exposure. Elijah watched it unfold with numb eyes. He wasn't surprised anymore, only tired. Then came the moment that changed everything. The university scheduled a public hearing. For the first time in its 79-year history, Westbridge would allow a live-streamed faculty review session, under pressure from student organizers and alumni. The day before the hearing, a list of witnesses was published. At the top, Henry Wallace, the man who solved it first, the man who had vanished from records. The man who had once said, "You'll be next." But the night before the hearing, something went wrong. Henry Wallace didn't show up to the prep call. His phone went to voicemail. His email bounced back. When Matsuoka sent someone to check on him, his apartment was empty. No signs of struggle. No sign of packing. Just gone. Local police listed it as a voluntary absence. No foul play. No forced entry. But those who knew Henry said he'd never run. He was ready to speak. He had waited decades for this. And now he was missing. The hearing went forward, but without its star witness. And without Henry, Westbridge's lawyers went on the offensive. They called Elijah brilliant, but naive. Said his experience was an unfortunate collision of misunderstanding and ambition. Called the other cases inconclusive. Suggested the documents were taken out of context. They even accused Matsuoka of weaponizing her position to orchestrate a campaign against a respected faculty member. The room erupted. Protests broke out. But the university wasn't interested in justice. They were interested in optics. Elijah sat in the back row, watching it unfold. He didn't flinch. He didn't speak, because he knew what came next. But just as the investigation began, a key witness disappeared. The headlines had begun to shift. What once read like a triumph was starting to take on the hollow tone of compromise.
Westbridge promises reform.
University investigates historic claims. Discussions underway. But Elijah Carter wasn't looking for discussion. He was looking for justice. Behind closed doors, Westbridge moved quickly, not toward accountability, but toward containment. An official email came from the university's legal counsel. It was brief, professional, and calculated. "We'd like to resolve matters amicably." The meeting was arranged in a boutique law office in downtown Boston. Elijah arrived alone, dressed in the same blazer he wore during the live stream. Across from him sat 3 lawyers. One was university legal. One represented the board. The third was a PR strategist in disguise. Their smiles were tight. Their tone was rehearsed. The script was clear. They offered him 1 year of full tuition, an official recommendation for transfer to any institution of his choice, a public resolution statement praising his academic resilience, and finally, an envelope. Inside, thick, polished, and stapled with golden clips. A non-disclosure agreement. He flipped through it as they watched. Legal jargon cloaked in civility, paragraphs about mutual understanding, respect for process, and the desire to protect the learning environment. But the real message was hidden in section. The student agrees not to make further public or private statements, accusations or implications against the faculty, institution, or any of its affiliates regarding prior academic disputes or allegations. In other words, silence. He left the meeting without signing. Later that night, Dr. Matsuoka called him. "They're offering you the golden ticket," she warned. "But it comes at the price of your voice." He didn't answer. For 2 days, Elijah sat with the contract. Not in rage, not in fear, but in clarity. He thought about his future. The offers pouring in from other schools, the TED Talk invitation, the fellowship from MIT. He thought about the chance to walk away. Start clean. Forget all of it. But he also thought about Henry Wallace, still missing. About the other students whose names were never mentioned. About the weight of being the one who couldn't be erased. So he made a choice. He called a press conference. He didn't alert Westbridge. He didn't send a statement to the media. He just walked the podium at a public event held by a civil rights foundation in Cambridge, Massachusetts, and took the microphone. Cameras were already rolling. He cleared his throat and began. They offered me a deal, he said. They want my silence in exchange for a future. He held up the NDA. They want me to stop telling the truth. To say we resolved it privately. To pretend the past doesn't matter. The room was silent. Elijah looked down at the contract in his hands. Then back up. This is what silence looks like. And then he tore it in half. The rip was loud. Ripped through the room. Ripped through social media. Torn straight down the spine. Papers fluttered to the floor. I won't be silent. And I won't disappear. Elijah stood before a national camera and tore the contract in half. 5 years had passed since Elijah Carter stood before national cameras and tore up the silence they tried to buy him with. In that moment, he hadn't just rejected the university's hush money. He had broken a cycle. And yet after the press faded, after the hashtag stopped trending, after the media turned to the next scandal, Elijah chose the one path that surprised everyone. He disappeared. No interviews, no speaking tours, no book deals. He declined every Ivy League scholarship, every honorary award, every exclusive invitation to diversify the stage. He wasn't interested in applause. He was interested in truth. He moved quietly, enrolling in a PhD program at a public university in Michigan. A place without marble pillars or elite handshakes. There he studied, taught night classes, wrote under pseudonym. He published 3 major proofs anonymously, all now considered foundational in applied theoretical math. He mentored first-generation students, led free online seminars for underrepresented youth, built a free access database of STEM resources. But none of it bore his name.
Until someone noticed.
A researcher from MIT traced one of the anonymous papers back to a style signature that matched Elijah's live-streamed proof. Others followed. Eventually an article emerged. Is the Elijah Carter method actually written by Elijah Carter? He didn't confirm. He didn't deny. Because the only thing he was waiting for was room. Westbridge University had never recovered. Enrollment was down 23%. Faculty turnover had doubled. Donor money slowed to a trickle. And every few years, a new op-ed would reopen the wounds. The scandal they still haven't addressed. Who protects the professors? The cost of silence. The department tried to rebrand. They hosted equity panels, promoted minoritized scholars, at least publicly. But the stain remained. And one day, in a move that shocked even their most cynical critics, Westbridge's board voted unanimously to extend an offer. Tenure track, full professorship, to Elijah Carter. No media push, no announcement, just a letter. Elijah didn't respond for 3 weeks. When he did, it was with a 2-line email. Send me the course list. If I take this position, I'm teaching in room. They agreed. It was the first day of spring semester. The room hadn't changed. Same gray cinder block walls. Same dusty whiteboard. Same humming fluorescent lights. Same rows of chairs. Still stiff, still unforgiving. Elijah walked in alone, early. He set down his bag, pulled out a fresh pack of markers, placed a single folder on the lectern, containing a printed copy of the proof he had written live, years ago. But now, he had something better. His own equation. Not just solved, conceived. He wrote it on the board before the students arrived. Carefully. Elegantly. Each line was clean. The problem was complex. Layered. Multidimensional. And open-ended. Students trickled in. They paused when they saw him. Some recognized his face. Others just felt the gravity in the room. He didn't introduce himself as a viral legend. He just said, "Welcome to Advanced Logic and Theory. I'm Professor Carter." No one whispered. No one snickered. No one questioned. He turned to the board and gestured to the problem. "This is your first challenge. It's not for a grade. You don't have to solve it today. Just promise me you'll try." A silence followed, not of confusion, but of reverence. Then the hands went up. The room that had once silenced voices now leaned forward. And Elijah smiled, because this time, nobody dared question his genius. Some names get erased. Some stories get buried. But truth? It always finds its voice. If Elijah's journey moved you, if you've ever been underestimated for who you are, type yes. If you believe in justice, and subscribe if this broke your heart.